from a high-level overview, we're the Call of Duty Companion app team. So for those of you who don't know what that is, you can install an app on your phone that is basically a way to get the latest news, see stuff related to the game, and just in general keep in contact with the Call of Duty franchise. So specifically, I'm Tim. I'm one of the software engineers, and the rest of you, if you want to introduce yourself too.
My name is Gatlin. I'm also just an engineer on the team. Been working on the app for about 2 years. I've been into mobile engineering for pretty much like since App Store and stuff like opened up. I just downloaded the videos, tried to learn it, get a thing. So I've been dabbling with mobile for a while, and it's nice to finally get in a career of that. So yeah, I'm Gatlin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jason. I've been on the mobile team for about 2.5 years, working on the companion app. I'm the lead developer of the project.
So my name is Ricky Romero. I'm also one of the developers there. So yeah, like pretty much I kind of do mostly everything besides designing. That's my weakness, just to let you guys know. I design like a developer. I'm pretty terrible at it, but hey, I can code and I can, put some stuff up, which is the only thing I'm good at right now. I'm trying to get better at it, but, slowly. Been doing mobile development for quite some time. Got into it with Swift, with iOS. And then, React Native came out, started playing around with that. That seemed really interesting. I saw that, you can basically build 2 platforms at once, which was super interesting. And, did that on the side. And then Activision came calling, and I have some experience with React Native plus with, iOS development. So that came in handy. It's super great working at Activision and on this app because we get to like play around with like the latest, technology, and it's super awesome. And, I've learned a lot from these guys. Like these guys are one of the smartest people, and I'm super grateful for having this opportunity to work alongside with these guys. And yeah, like it's been pretty awesome.
Basically, kind of what Ricky touched on is we use React Native on the app. So to kind of tie it into the curriculum of stuff you guys learn at Codesmith, I know largely it tends to focus on JavaScript. So that's what we are writing every day. We're writing JavaScript. And in a way, it's not too far off from web development in general. I think, probably one of the biggest things people notice right away with React Native is that we're not using CSS or HTML. Instead, we use JSX. But really, it's not too far off. So if you haven't done React Native, you should definitely check it out. But to get to, I guess, the core idea of this talk is I'm pretty sure you're all experiencing something similar, but most of the world is stuck inside right now to some extent or another. So really what kind of this story is about is just how we've been transitioning to remote, how in a lot of ways we were already remote, and how that played into our situation, and just kind of how we do things as a team remotely, because we feel like that's probably something you guys are experiencing now in your curriculum at Codesmith, but also something that you're more likely now to experience moving into the job field, in the future after your program.
I would say React Native is very similar to web design until it gets to building and deploying. No FTPs, no need to but you got to know how to use Android Studios and Xcode to be able to get it on the phone, which is usually a lot of times your biggest hurdle once you got a big kind of lot of pieces moving in an app. But yeah, besides that, yeah, you're right, like web design.
That's pretty accurate. So to touch on working remote on a project that's this big with such a small team, we have kind of from the start set the team up to be able to work remote, and that I would say is part responsibility of the team that surrounds us. Our directors allow a certain level of autonomy on our team. So just having the support from management goes a long way as far as being able to work from home at other times of the year. So the misfortune of, you know, the pandemic happening, we were kind of already set up to be able to take advantage of a remote work situation. We could already VPN into our projects and things like that, which is, you know, partially because of our DevOps team. So just having the support, number one, is really effective, and just having an amazing team that you can absolutely trust to you know, get things done. I mean, there's only 6 of us that work on this project, so that also goes a long way. I think Gatlin, out of all of us, can really speak the most about remote work, and probably talk about more like having it as a daily routine for an extended period of time like this.
Yeah, I first started working at Activision early 2008, and towards the end of the year, I was given the ability to work full-time remote. So I took advantage of that, of course, because I'm originally from Florida. So friend of a friend is how I, got connected and got to get my application at Activision. And then I got a call back, like, when can you be here? I'm like, I looked for a flight, and I'm like, this Thursday? And so they're like, cool, we'll see you then. So I got the quickest flight I could out to California, got an Airbnb until I found a nice little place to rent. First time I've ever been to LA was then. And it was nice working there. I love to see the building and everything. It is nice to get on a routine, I've realized, when I work. So what I realized when I was at California, I'd wake up, I'd bike to work, and then when I was at my desk, that was like the productive time. And when you get home in your bedroom, in your room, you feel like, oh, this isn't productive time, this is casual time, which is a lot of times what I think is hard to distinguish from when you work remotely. So I've been working remotely for, a year and a half now, maybe a little more. I don't know, something like that. So it's been a minute since I've even seen these guys in person. But I still, we talk on a daily basis, morning, night, during work hours, past that. As you see, like, I'm East Coast, so it's a lot later here than it is for them. So like a 5 o'clock meeting for them is 8 o'clock for me. And I just got to get used to that, which is, it's worth it for me. One thing that I've always found very useful is to make yourself a workspace. Like, I don't keep my gaming computer and my working laptop on the same desk, because you have to be able to separate and distinguish your workspace from your play space. It's pretty much essentially, it's just like they tell you where you don't want to hang out and stay up all night late in your bedroom. You try to use your bedroom as a place to sleep, because if you only go in there to sleep, your body gets used to that being your sleep spot. So when you get there, you go to sleep. So you make a workstation that is your workplace. Headphones work amazing. I don't know. I listen to like some ambient stuff off of Spotify, and I can just block out the screaming children behind me. And I could just get into the zone. Another thing I find with working remote is you do feel more disconnected. I don't know if anyone else has felt that. Like, when you're not seeing people on a day-to-day and you're only having conversations with people because it's strictly, needed. Like, I need to reach out to the UX people to talk about something, and not like seeing them in front of the coffee and getting caught up with everything. You can sometimes feel like, you are very much separated and you're almost falling behind just because you're not getting the day-to-day talk. Those like spontaneous meetings that'll happen just between the desks and stuff. I usually it's not something I can get to, but the guys are always really good. If that happens, they kind of like catch me up on what I missed, or they'll just be like, hey, we're talking, and they'll do a Slack call. I think for remote, the biggest things that help a remote team working, whether it be a startup or even like Activision, would be you get like your GitHub, your place to be able to have everyone cooperatively work on code and be able to version control it fine. Make sure you have those reviews. Like, I think it's very important to have reviews on a GitHub, just so everyone can kind of see what it does. And that way, the communication is required at that point. Since we all work remote, code can't slip into the code base without at least 3 of us knowing that it's going in. So that allows for more cohesion. And even if like, I even go back if it's already been approved and I like just kind of read the code just to get familiar with the changes that are coming because I wasn't really like next to them when they were coding it, you know? Yeah, and then Slack, like some type of messaging. Discord, I know a lot of people use as well. Just some type of like, you can make literally have a private chat just between the 6 of us, and then we have a private chat with like a few extra people, and we have these very specified chats within Slack that just allows you to keep those little conversation going that you would say have like in the workspace itself, and be able to just connect constantly. You know, I make sure to have it on my phone. Which at the same time makes it hard for you to separate from saying like, I guess, you know, it's 8 o'clock, I'm still working. Yeah, you get into this point where you just kind of forget to go home figuratively, and you just kind of work and grind until you're done with, I don't know, you're satisfied. I don't know if anyone, I'm kind of rambling at this point. I don't know if anyone has any other topics I want to jump on.
No, yeah, like I ran into the same issue where like when I first went remote, when everything happened, I would continue working and I had to set strict schedules, like because like I was just continuing to work. So I kind of ran into the same situation as you, Gatlin, where like, you know, you just get used to working and you're like, oh, I don't have a commute, so I can continue to work. I want to get ahead. But then like you forget that you have a life and you're like, oh wait, I need to like set certain times and, you know, to, you know, go and actually eat or go actually hang out with your loved ones and stuff. So yeah, I totally feel you on that.
And hey, sorry, go on. So not saying something.
I was just gonna say, Jesus asked a question that I think actually like kind of plays off what Ricky's talking about too. Is Jesus asked, how has your daily routine changed since you all started working remotely? Are more meetings occurring? So what's kind of interesting about that is like, yeah, we're talking about how like you want to be able to put down your work and at the right times of the day, or focus on your work and like maintain those windows or whatever. So one thing for us is I guess working remotely, you have to think about team alignment and making sure like everything's on the same page and that everyone knows what's supposed to be happening. So ultimately, like we work in 2-week sprints where our project manager kind of helps us determine like what things we're going to be working on in that time. So at first, kind of meetings ticked up a little bit, but as a team in general, I'd say we're actually pretty anti-meeting, which is great. Like some of my favorite things about the team is that we tend to push back on too many meetings, especially because people can be trusted to get their work done. So for like a while, when we switched to remote, we were doing like a daily stand up at 1 p.m. And a lot of the time it was like write in only, like you didn't always have to be on call. Sometimes you just type a message of what you're doing. And then we also were doing stand downs for a while and like still are, which is like at the end of the day, when you're done with your work, just kind of recap what's happened. I definitely noticed that that's gotten looser over time, and like other things have been introduced, like no meeting Fridays as like a company-wide thing. So we're not like expected to say anything on Friday if we don't want to. And really, like in terms of planning and stuff, we still have like our sprint retro every other week, and then in the off weeks we have our sprint planning. So I'd actually say meetings haven't gone up necessarily, but I do find myself like one-on-one text chatting with individual people more to like figure out and get to the bottom of things.
Yeah, I can definitely underline that and say that all of the interactions that I've had have been on, you know, more just a one-on-one basis with different team members across not only just my core team, but any of the support team, back end or even content, or, you know, we have several teams that surround us that help put the app together. So that is one of the things that is more efficient, I would say. On top of that, I think just not having the commute, like Ricky and Gatlin talk about. Well, of course, Gatlin doesn't have a commute, but not having a commute, so you can kind of squeeze extra time in, is it's it's good, but you, to a fault, you don't want to overwork, because I could find myself sitting in the same place 12 hours straight. I mean, it's happened before we started working remote, and I kind of expect to do it a couple of times, but I would say that I've been able to figure out how to dovetail like my everyday work that I just do around the house into my day, and use, if not less time, the same amount of time that I would during my commute, and get more done. So, like Jesus asked, I would say that I've become more, or not Jesus, I apologize, that Alex asked, have we become more effective? I would argue that things are more effective working remotely.
Yeah, you start to lose a bit of that routine. I guess I know when I was growing up, I was very anti-routine. I was like, oh, routine, destroys what makes us human. But then as I get older, I realize you don't get a lot done if you don't have a routine. It's hard to get to bed if you don't go to bed at the same time. So like a lot of times the commute to work was a nice time for me to like catch up on my latest albums that I've been wanting to listen to. Or it almost adds this forced relaxed time for you to think about something else. Whereas I know a lot of people aren't used to working remote. The day is probably just running together. They're all just the same day. You wake up, you sit down at your desk, you eat something, you go get a shower, you go to bed, you wake up, you go to your desk. So one thing that does help me stay more productive and not have that kind of like weird just mix of days is trying to separate the days by doing like other projects. So I love gardening. So I'm building a farm outside, and what I do is first thing I do when I wake up, I have my coffee, I walk through the garden, kind of take a leisurely stroll, relax first, get more like grounded in tune with myself before I go sit down and say, okay, work time. And then working remotely also allows you to have more breaks throughout the day and be able to separate your timing when you're working on things. So it almost feels like you're working, I don't know. It really depends on the person. Some people like to just sit down and, hammer out their hours. Others would want to like section up. Like, oh, I think Tam at one point mentioned, he's like, I'll enjoy the ability to be able to just like go take a nap now and then get back to work in a little bit. And once again, our job allows us that freedom. Like we're trusted that, we know that you're going to get your stuff done. So we don't have to be like, what do you do in this hour? What do you do in this hour? Get to work, like you need so many lines of code written by noon or something. I'm glad we don't deal with anything like that, which also helps being remote.
Throw in another question, and I'm going to try to get to all of these eventually. So, and I might not answer them in order because sometimes I'm trying to, pick them out based on how relevant they are to what we're saying right now, and especially so I'm taking priority on the remote ones right now. So one question is, are you guys going to push for remote first post-COVID? Jason, as a lead, you might have more to say about that, but just to preface a little bit first, I think that as a company, I don't know, but on a team by team basis, I think the remote culture and what's acceptable in terms of how much people are remote definitely varies. But did you want to add anything to that one, Jason?
I mean, I think you kind of said it. It's really, it's more of a company discretion if we have that, but I would argue that the value that a team provides could either make that happen or not. It depends on how much effort you put in, or even in your management, if they can recognize, what you're capable of in a remote situation. And if it seems like a plus, I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know one way or the other, but I don't see it being impossible to happen. But all of that's up in the air. We don't know when this thing is going to end in the first place. So we all might be remote for quite a while anyway.
So another question I'm going to pull out is by Christian. And he said, do you find that you need to have more detailed specs and documentation due to less face-to-face time? What do you guys think about this one?
I would say it's about the same. But I do feel encouraged because I have certain, you have a little bit of, I guess, extra like spare time, it feels like, as you're doing your daily work, where I feel a little more encouraged to just do more documentation anyway. I've done a little bit of that, but it hasn't gone up very much. I'd say it's like 1% more than normal.
Yeah. And, of course, yeah, I don't think it's increased too much. We are pretty good about pushing it and like getting ourselves to try to write stuff down. But we're also a team that we're constantly sharing with each other, like, oh, look at this new way to do React Native, or like we're discussing the next version of how might we structure our stuff. So we're constantly having that developed conversation of how we structure our code, so that we all kind of think like ants. Like, an anthill looks like it's built by one ant, but it's by thousands of them. So the idea is we try to get our coding techniques down to about the same. We use the same linters, we share all that, just so when we go to write something, or if we go to fix someone else's code, we're already familiar with the layout and exactly how we want to be setting that up. Which documentation helps a lot if, you have some team members that kind of stray away from those conversations, or, doesn't keep up with the rest of the team. It all depends on the people in our team. And what we found is we do pretty good without documentation, but I'm not suggesting not do documentation, because I've looked at my own code like months later to be like, what the heck is happening? I guess I'm always judging myself as a coder at like the next few months. I'm like, who wrote this? I'm like, oh, it was me. So there's always things to learn. And I think documentation really helps kind of give the idea what you were thinking of when building a component or whatnot.
So one trend I'm starting to see in questions, and since we're kind of near the 30-minute mark anyways, which was like the official talk time, we can start just being more broad with what questions we start answering, which these are great. Two topics I'm kind of seeing is like, why React Native? Should I do React Native? And like, what should I do as like, in terms of like my job prospects for the future? So I'll try to tie some of these together, specifically like starting with the React Native questions I'm seeing in the chat. So a few that we're seeing right now, guys, is stuff like, what technologies, tools are you using besides JS and React Native? And then another question might be something like, hey, I see you guys are using React Native, so why did we pick React Native, especially over something like Flutter?
Now, I don't know what Flutter is, honestly. I haven't heard of it. It's something I'll have to look into. The basis of React Native is it's a lot of work to build an app for two platforms. To write one for iOS and Android, they have to be two completely separate projects at that point and managed very differently because tools are different. And anytime I've ever seen any other tool like React Native, it wasn't native. It was almost like a web view played through an iOS or Android emulator. There wasn't as much controller. React Native actually builds out as like a native app, which is very good to have. Like it allows for a more solid app. Mostly I would pick it because it's just that initial time save. Everything for Android and iOS can be stuck together. Yes, we have some native code for both iOS and Android to make them work properly in their own platforms, but it saves us a lot of our boilerplate can be the same for both Android and iOS. And I found React Native does a good job of that.
Yeah, I think another big thing with React Native is the community behind it. It has a huge community behind it, and I think also that it's written in React. It also helps to onboard other developers. Like we onboarded a web developer that was using Vue, and so when he jumped onto our team, it was really easy for him to kind of pick up because a lot of it was in JavaScript, and it kind of has some similarities with Vue, with like, the lifecycle stuff. And so it has a lot of like similarities to like a lot of web components as well. And I think that was a big factor with picking React Native, plus performance too. It's really, really good with performance. We really push it. A lot. Like we have so many things going on in there. It's pretty crazy what we make it do. And yeah, like the community behind it is really awesome. Like there's so many like, we can use anything that really React does, like too, like let's say victory, like graphs and stuff, and a bunch of other ones. Like we tried to limit the amount of like third-party libraries because it's it's a lot to manage. Because when we want to upgrade, we want to limit the amount of things we want to upgrade. Just because we don't want to it's just so much to manage. And the scale of it has grown so much for these couple years. So yeah, React Native has been pretty good so far. Flutter came out later, so I think when we started, I don't know what exactly was in the market, but Flutter came out I think it was too early, or it just came out, so it wasn't on the table when it was being talked about. And I think Jason knows a little bit more about that because he was in those talks when that was happening. Because I got on a little bit later after the project already started.
So just to oh, sorry, Jason, you go ahead.
I was gonna say we started the project on React Native. It was the choice over Flutter. Flutter was brand new out the box. It was not production ready. It was kind of just out to, I guess, Google already makes Angular, so it was already in existence, but Ionic did not have the performance whatsoever that React Native does. So it was clearly a choice at that time from React Native, I would say 32 until now. It's been ready for Android and iOS. On top of that, there's a question here I was going to answer that kind of adds on top of this that Yevgeny asked about having previous experience in iOS or Android development. It is a benefit of that. If you're familiar with Objective-C or Swift or Java or Kotlin, React Native can make use of that, and you will have to, depending on if you write your own native modules or have to touch the native layer, which you can absolutely do and control it with JavaScript in React Native. You would be basically creating your own third-party dependencies without going to npm or what have you. So I think it's kind of a plus to know that it's not a definite requirement, but just jumping into React Native, you will pick some of those things up along the way, depending on what aspects of a project that you work on.
Yeah, I'll hop in and give some takes on things too. And this one's my biased take. It might not suit everyone, but if it were me and I were in your guys' shoes in a code camp and I was asking, should I learn Flutter or React Native? I'd 100% choose React Native because there's just more jobs for it. Because it leverages JavaScript, like Ricky was saying, you do have that huge community of support. Whereas Flutter uses Dart, which is a much less known language. And if you're just out there looking for Flutter jobs, there's probably just not going to be as many in general. Also, if you learn React Native, you also are learning all the same skills of JavaScript and React. So you could also be looking at those jobs too. So it's kind of just don't put all your eggs in one too constrictive of a basket. And just the question that Jason mentioned too, to answer that a little bit, which was, I was wondering if any of you needed previous experience in mobile development. So for me, when I got the role at Activision, I didn't know React Native at all. But my job prior to that was Angular, JavaScript, and my job prior to that was native Android developer. So I had enough stuff that made sense for me to get hired into a role like React Native because I had those fundamental skills relating to mobile and JavaScript. But if you guys want real advice on what are you going to do to, the question ends with getting a job in React Native. If you're looking at a job description of something you want and it says should know native Android, then you need to ask yourself, have I ever built a project I can show to them that uses native Android? If it says, it requires React Native experience, you need to say, have I taken the time to, even if it's a small project that takes maybe a week or something, it's very small in scope. The fact that you can ship something really goes a long way in proving that you have enough proficiency in it to actually be hired to do a job in it too.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that. I was actually a boot camper. I went to boot camp. That's how I learned my programming. I have no degree. Actually, I went to college for horticulture and then took a programming boot camp because I wanted to get into that. I actually started it because of game design, and then I just found an outlet in mobile, so that's kind of what I started working on. And jobs are different. I know when I was at boot camp, I was always told to prepare, like, get your portfolio, have awesome things on it and experience, and you want to be able to nail the coding exam or all these questions that they're going to give you. So, back to the point of picking between React Native and Flutter, honestly, I'd say both. Just at least the tutorial, because if someone comes and asks you to be like, hey, why would you pick React Native over Flutter? You want to be able to pull an answer like Jason did, and not one like me of, oh, I've never heard of Flutter. You want to be able to say, oh, actually, I picked it this because of this reason. I wouldn't say learn both of them fully. I would definitely pick something to learn a lot, but I would definitely get your hands wet and just about feet wet. I don't know what the saying is. Just kind of touch on a lot of different platforms, just so you're making the right choice. I know that's what boot camps do a lot of times. They kind of introduce you to a lot of different codes and get you kind of used to it. And then that's what helped me find what I was better at, was to be able to jump and kind of really touch everything. So if anyone had a question about any code, I'd be like, yes, I have worked on that, and this is my opinion. Even though I only worked, did basic tutorials online for it, I still got the gist of what that language is about. The thing that I know that got me this job at Activision, and when I was helping pick other teammates, was the same thing I was looking, was a good portfolio of projects. It's all the projects you do in boot camps are awesome. They're great. They teach you a lot of stuff, but they always, a lot of times they kind of can come off as a little unfinished. So when I was anytime I'm looking at someone's resume and their portfolio, I can usually distinguish and see okay, this is a passion project, which is usually what I look for. I want a coder who is passionate about coding. It's oh, I made this in my spare time, and I also published it, it's finished. That is a big thing for me to see in a coder, is someone who has taken a project, completely finished it themselves, and even published it. I don't care how many people look at it. It's just that the fact that you were able to completely push through and be able to handle the situation on your own. I see that as a big, as a big talent that I would want. I would want people who are more like a solo coder, someone who can find the answers themselves, someone who can figure it out the best way, someone who can kind of take a look at their own code and improve it, and also be able to take it to fruition and be able to completely land it. I saw my name. Gatlin, is this your first SWE job out of boot camp? Your story, thanks. I don't feel impressive. I feel normal still, but I appreciate that. I tried to freelance out of boot camp once I got to boot camp. I worked at Universal before that, and even before I worked at Universal, I would freelance in film. So that's what I enjoyed doing. I knew how to freelance. I thought it would be easy to be a freelance programmer. I did not enjoy that so much. I had a hard time being able to land the jobs to make them line up bills, and freelancing is rough. But when I was freelancing, like I said, I made a huge passion project. I had my golden egg of a project. I made a VR project, phone app that you can see VR videos in. And I believe that was my showboat to make me stand out from the other applications. So okay, this guy went to boot camp, this guy went to boot camp. Oh, this guy actually makes an app, he maintains it, there's data, it's beautiful, it's finished, it's complete. And I think that's really makes you stand out, because it shows that I don't have to have other people tell you I'm a programmer. I'm showing you right now, this is an app that I build and maintain right now. There's no question asked at that point.
So I'll jump in. There's another question that Carl asked, which is what kind of projects in the portfolio have impressed you? And honestly, I'm in total agreement with Gatlin. I think that not to say that your entire life outside of your job has to become making personal projects all the time, because work-life balance is important too. But yeah, so what kind of projects impress you? To me, it doesn't have to be grand in scope or huge. It doesn't have to be the next Instagram or something. If anything, that strikes me as too ambitious a lot of the time. What I'd actually like to see in an impressive project is something that's, gone from initial concept all the way to shipping. It kind of disappoints me when people are this is my portfolio. And it's well, I'm just looking at screenshots of a website. I want to be able to type in the website and load it. Or if it's an app that you're showing me, I don't care if it's one little screen that does something. I want to be able to go to the app store and download it, because that to me, like, you know, here at Activision, we're shipping features, and I want to see that like you can ship features, you can ship things and get it into people's hands. Otherwise it just kind of comes off as like you can't see something to its completion. So I'd say that's probably the most important thing. And also, just to add on this a little bit, I think just having like one project that's like Gatlin was saying, it's kind of obvious when you're like, this is just your boot camp work being recycled into a portfolio. Like that's pretty apparent. But when it's a passion project, yeah, that sets you above 95% of applicants, because you just be surprised how few people actually can like see one thing through from concept to completion. So like already, like just have one thing you care about shipping, goes super far.
I want to add on to that and say that some projects that you'll see that you can tell someone started in during their boot camp or at a time, and they've taken it and they've gone over, you know, like I don't want to say above and beyond or overtime with it or anything, but they've taken it and added a twist or put their own unique spin on it, or just kind of reworked it and massaged it to own it themselves. And those are the kinds of projects that really impress me. Something that is really an expression of the person that put it together, instead of it just being like a regurgitation of their instruction.
Yeah, I agree on that point, because like I think the thing that you're looking for is, I don't want to see someone who can like read step-by-step things and build it. I want someone to be able to like think about it and create it, be able to tell them like, hey, this is the idea and we really want to work with this, and you can like visualize it and build off of it and be able to add your own spin to it. They go, to just show us that as you're building it, you're going, oh, this would be cool to add, or oh, if I do it this way, this will also be nice. You know, I can, you know, component type like this. Yeah, just I like to be able to see when people kind of can take it on their own, and like you said, just kind of do their own spin to show that like they're very comfortable coders and they're not just following a guideline.
And just to give a little more breakdown on, someone asked something earlier about like how many of you are boot campers versus not. I think, and this isn't like a brag because everyone on my team is super smart. I think I'm the only one with a formal computer science degree on the team. I know, Ricky, I think you did something similar, like information systems or something. You had to.
Yeah, I did information technology because I started off as networking. So my background, it started off with like networking. I was going to go for like security at first, and that got kind of a little boring. And so I kind of like saw like these different classes when it like, you know, computer science 101, and I started taking those classes, and those were more interesting. And so that was my background. And so I got really into mobile during school and started learning that. And so that was my background before going.
Yeah, it's similar for me too. It's kind of, I got into mobile because I was going to a 4-year program. And I know our other developer who's not here went to a 4-year program, but I think his might have been design or something. And that's how
he was design.
Yeah, and then Gatlin's from a boot camp, and then Jason, I know you were in a program for a while, but then you basically switched to self-taught, and now you're our team lead. So, I mean, you guys aren't, you know, I get that the quality of different boot camps can vary. I haven't taken Codesmiths, but like from what I've seen, it seems great. But really, like the ball is in your guys' hands. Like you don't have to think that not having a 4-year degree is the thing that's stopping you. The thing that's stopping you is like really like work experience, which somehow you have to overcome. And 2, the way I recommend overcoming that is by having actual projects to show. Focus on those. Is there any other questions you guys want to pull? We still got like 15 minutes. We can keep answering these.
I have a quick question. So when you guys are saying like, oh, you know, I like to see this guy having this kind of portfolio, or like I have like this guy having like a full-fledged project, is it like, have you guys been in the seat where like you are interviewing somebody, or you are making that choice for somebody to be on your team, and that's kind of like they're like, oh, this guy is kind of cool, he can do this and this, and like you guys are like, oh, okay, let me check him out. So does he have like this kind of project, and is it fleshed out, is it fully developed, and is that like the kind of mindset going on? And how much of a say do you have that as an engineer? Because I know like it's a little bit different as a hiring manager.
Now, one thing that, like, it's going to sound super cheesy, but Activision's like logo on the wall is like, it's the people or something, like Activision, it's the community. And there's something I have to attest to that is that our bosses they're great. They're very good. They have a lot of trust with us. And they also understand the importance of, what do you even call that? Like coercion, like how people work together. So
Company culture, yeah.
Yeah, the company culture is very important because, me and Jason were given Tim and Ricky's portfolios to look over. They're like, hey, these are some people that we're looking at. We were in the process. We all got to work together to kind of like see if we can come to just like a, what do you call it? Like we all agree on who we'd want to add to the team, because a lot of that is to do with the culture. As do we see, we've seen some people who have like really good code, but then you see like there's not much, we don't know how they'd fit in the team very well. Their code is like, it's, I don't know, almost like very polished, but it seems like they don't know how to use a lot of other methods. Maybe they won't, fit into the team that well with our coding structure, just things like that. So be personable.
Yeah, and like the team has a big say in who gets added to the team, because when I got hired on, it was Gatlin and Jason who were interviewing me alongside our director. And so, they sat me down and they did the whole interview. The first step was a coding challenge to kind of see like how your coding skills are. And then if you qualify and it's good enough, you qualify for the second round, which is the interviewing process. The funny thing is, like, I was like a couple weeks new on a team, and I was also included in hiring Tim onto the team, which was pretty neat, because I was like, I'm like a couple weeks in, they're like, okay, come to this meeting. We're thinking about adding somebody else onto the team. The team's growing, and it was Tim, and I was like, oh wow, like this is pretty cool. Like this is unheard of, for my previous job. To be able to have a say in like, hey, does this person fit in this team? Will you guys, one, get along with him and make sure that is going to be a good fit for you? And yeah, like that's pretty cool. Like we have a say, and it's pretty awesome to have that.
Yeah, so one thing about our team is that we have very fluid communication. Our interviews are usually pretty non-technical, mainly because we designed a challenge that is kind of set up to check your knowledge of something in layers, like how deep you actually understand the framework versus, just being introduced to it. And it can be completed by anyone, but depending on your knowledge of React Native, you'll do certain things at certain points in the project. So we can kind of judge your technical chops just from that.
Yeah, like a technical challenge a lot of times could be just like a single page React Native thing that we want that you'd want to build. And what would distinguish people is, say, you'd have some people who build it as if it's a one-page app, but it's awesome to see someone come in and put in the framework for a whole app, multi-page app with navigation and everything, even if it's just that one page, because it shows that they aren't building this project just to get in. They're building this project to be something that can grow. And that's a great thing to show someone, is that like, oh, I can take your challenge, but I'll raise you one kind of thing.
So I'm gonna jump in on this too, and maybe this is relevant to you guys, but yeah, definitely the people who are in your interview, all their input is gonna matter, or else they just wouldn't be in the room. Two is we actually had a position open a while ago that we were considering filling. We ended up closing the position because we weren't really finding candidates we liked, and kind of the circumstances shifted a little bit. But we ended up interviewing like a lot of entry level like programmers, because we were open to that. We were open to mentoring someone, and like hands down the two things, one is more important than the other in my opinion. that like really blocked people, in my opinion. One was like culture fit. I actually ended up feeling like that came up a lot where, and by culture fit, I don't just mean that we like you as a person. I mean that like you're someone who we feel like can take feedback, or like sit and work through a problem were things that we assessed. But the number one thing that bugs me with people and gets my veto very quickly is if, especially if you're entry level, is if you just can't say the words, I don't know. Like it's okay to just once in a while say, I don't know. Sometimes that's the right answer, because in a lot of interviews, there's like some that stand out in my mind where I'm just remembering, instead of just saying they didn't know or saying, hey, I don't know, but if I had to guess, here's my best answer, which would have been acceptable too, they just try to like kind of muddle their way through the answer. And it becomes very apparent very quickly, like, I know you don't know the answer. Why you're torturing us both by trying to pretend you do. It's okay to just say, I don't know. That's fine. Like just, then we can move on to the next one. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake that entry-level programmers make, is they feel like they always have to give an answer. And I feel like so many, like even engineers I know at other places say this too. It's like, just say you don't know when you don't know. And that such an honest answer, it's so much more preferable.
And that's definitely a cultural thing, because if I have a teammate, I definitely want them to be able to like communicate with me. So they, hey, can you go take care of blah, blah. And they just go, sure. And just sit there like, I have no idea what to do right now. Like I would rather someone go, wow, I have no idea how to do that. And either like, they'll be like, let me go figure it out. Like I'll Google it, because most answers for, at least we found for React Native or any other language I've worked in, is somewhere on the internet. Or you can just be like, hey, could you help me figure this out? Now, you don't want to be a person who like always relies on your lead to kind of show you everything, because then at that point you're realizing you're taking up not only your coding time, but also whoever's showing you the code's coding time. So if it's something that needs to be like, that you both need to agree on, then yeah, it'd be great to go to someone. But if it's something that could be a quick like Stack Overflow look or something, just Google real quick, then, you know, we would definitely suggest you try that at least first.
So since we're down to our last 10 minutes, we're going to try to rapid fire through some of these questions, just to make sure that we cover as many as possible. And you guys too, if you want to just like pull any out and give a quick answer to them, please feel free. So is being an older coder a barrier to getting hired? No, absolutely not. Ageism sucks. I wouldn't ever judge anyone based on their age, young or old.
And I'm at least 10 years older than everybody here on the team. So yeah, that age I don't think really is much of a factor. Your passion, you're as young as your passion, I would say.
Yeah. So another question, what are your big recommendations to new engineers searching for remote positions? It's definitely, when you're a new engineer, harder to get a remote position because people are more concerned that you're going to need more mentorship, or you're going to have a harder time just doing things on your own. So I definitely think proving yourself through what we've mentioned before, projects, is probably your biggest advantage. Other than that, yeah, you have to look online really hard to find remote positions, because they are definitely a little more sought after. And because they're remote, you get a higher amount of candidates applying.
Yeah, and if you're hiring remote people, you definitely need to make sure that you have someone trustworthy, because they're literally going to be sitting at home all day. Like what I did is, our position, we don't hire remote people. How I got into remoting is that I said I was willing to move. So I flew out to California. I was away from my wife and kids for 8 months, just to kind of prove that like, I'm here, I want to be a part of the team. And then when it got towards the end, I asked like, is remote something you guys would be willing to work with me on? And I also did my own research. I looked into, and I saw there are already remote people working there. So I knew that was something they would be willing to work with.
So another thing is, I think two people have asked kind of what Activision Blizzard interviews are like. Is it heavy on algorithms and data structures? And also someone asked, focused or project building focused. So every team's different at our company. I know Blizzard specifically does tend to be more algorithm whiteboarding focused. That's a real thing. I'd say in a lot of what I've run into is you'd just be surprised how many companies still do whiteboarding. Personally, I don't really think that's the best assessment of what a good candidate is. That's why our team's different. We typically, as mentioned, do the coding challenge. And then when we get you on site, we'll ask you questions about your coding challenge. It's not like the challenge has to be good. Like it has to look like the specs and it has to work and stuff. but we might ask you decisions about why'd you do it this way? Why'd you make this choice? And if you don't have any answer, then it's like, oh, what, you know, you should know about trade-offs and pros and cons of things.
There's a good question about non-technical information. What I really enjoy about our area is that everyone in every different group seems to have a good understanding of everything. Like we have a designer on our coding team, which allows us to be able to communicate with the designers more. Some of our designers are UX designer, even like our directors and stuff, they all have a base knowledge of coding itself. So they work on being able to communicate with us on what we're doing. And we also try to learn design and UX and all the terminologies and stuff that they do so that we can bridge that gap between the communication. Yeah.
Another question, with being a long timer at one company hinder hiring like 15 or 20 years? No, same thing with the ageism, like would you hire any age thing? It doesn't really matter. If your skills are there and you're relevant to the position, cool. What would you look for in someone applying for more senior advanced positions? I think senior stuff is definitely where work experience starts to come into play a lot more. A lot of seniors are people who've been in the industry for more than 5 years. You know, someone who's really shipped a lot and proven they have a track record of being at companies for a long enough time to have a significant impact and being able to talk about those stories. Another question just came in. Has your company done anything in particular that has made your work from home experience better? Anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, they shipped me my chair, which was pretty awesome. So I have a comfortable chair. So that was my big plus, because chairs are super expensive. I did not know like how expensive chairs can be. And it was pretty awesome. Like I asked, I was like, hey, can I pick it up? And they were like, well, we're not letting anybody come to the office right now. What's your address? And so I gave them my address and they shipped it to me, which was pretty awesome. Other than that, they pay our internet, which is pretty cool. What else? I think that's so far all I've used. Besides, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say they do a lot of other things online to try to create community coercion. Like every Tuesday is Beverage with a Buddy, where they encourage people to kind of stop working and go talk to people, like not face to face, as much face to face as you can get, just to make it feel like we're not just like hamsters living in our own little tanks. And you know, they do a lot of like cooking shows, and there's like morning yoga, and there's like online concerts, or there's just. They try to supply some entertainment to make it feel like we can actually do stuff together. Yeah, so which is, I don't do any of them personally, which I don't know why, but it's cool they offer that.
Yeah, there's also
same
a lot
here.
of,
I don't do it.
there's also several streams and talks during like the week, every week. The different invited guests will come and have something to say. But there's a question that Kevin asked earlier about the most challenging thing we find when there's creative vision on our team that we want to take a risk on, but executive leadership kind of has a different viewpoint on the process. We don't really deal with creative, we deal with more with technical. But we had the last summer before Modern Warfare launches, we had some work we wanted to get done, that there were certain features that we wanted to implement, and I kind of agreed to them, but there was conditions that we had to do a refactor so that we could upgrade our React Native and upgrade our dependencies so that we could actually achieve those features. And initially it was like, well, we'll just see what we can do without doing all of that. And then I'm like, no, it won't take that long. It will only take a little while to do the refactor that we need to do. But it didn't. It took about 3 months. And long story short, we were still able to have the project in a shippable format before the launch of the game. And overall, the performance of the app increased, even though we kind of took a hit on how much time it took to estimate that part of the project. It was a major overhaul, and it still turned into like a win-win situation.
So just real quick to pop in, we're at time, but if it's cool with Ashley, I'm still down to keep answering questions because I like answering questions.
Well, one question I would love to jump on before we even Tamara asked, what are how many women pretty much are on the dev team at Activision? How diverse is the company? And I think that's a great question because one, Activision I find is very diverse. We have a large amount of female coders on our team. You know, the boss of our whole department is female. And I find it pretty diverse. Now, our little group here isn't the most diverse of the mobile team. You know, I can't speak to that for any specific reason. You know, we looked at all things come through, and I guess it's just all of the resumes and people that came for the job were males. But our team as a whole is I would say pretty diverse group.
So just real quick, Ashley, is it cool if we keep going for a little bit and just
Yeah,
people who
definitely.
need to
I just
jump
want
off?
to be mindful of your time since you are volunteering to speak to our community. So I just want to thank you all for doing so. We're happy to keep the Zoom open for as long as you're free.
Sure, yeah. I like doing this stuff. So let's keep going. If anyone needs to drop though, feel free. One question I really wanted to answer was Carlos asked, with COD being such a big franchise and the players being such diehard fans, how does their input affect the direction of the app? And how do you guys as a team take on that workload? Thanks for being here talking to us. So this is something I've been dealing with a lot lately, and I'm actually like writing an article on it right now. I haven't published yet, but basically the article is about how when we launched the app, it had 2 stars and now it has 4.8 stars. So ultimately, yes, player input matters a lot. Yes, we receive a lot of it because we have millions of monthly active users. So somehow we have to sift all that and make decisions based on that. But we've been getting really good at this lately. We have a on-site QA person named Brandon, who's awesome, and he's taken over our support email. He reaches out to people through Reddit who are having problems. We read all the App Store reviews. We've put stuff into the app that allows people to submit feedback directly to us, which we sort and compile. I have people who reach out to me on Twitter sometimes with issues that then I go and get resolved. Additionally, we once in a while will have what are basically like UI, UX, I don't know what to call them, like testing sessions where we essentially bring in people who are hardcore app users who have never used the app at all. And we do these UX sessions with them where they're asked to do things and our UX designers can kind of determine what's too confusing in the app and what things should we do. So feedback is huge because, I mean, in a way, different game company, but I always think about Valve. I don't know if you guys know that they make like Half-Life and Team Fortress and all that. Their entire thing is like, well, game development is kind of like a scientific process. You have your hypothesis, here's what I think will work, and then you code something and you see, is this going to work? And if the data says no, well, then you need to alter your hypothesis, keep trying to get the results you want. So for the app, in terms of like UX and fixing things and all this, we have, we're constantly having a hypothesis of like, is this going to make the app better? Is this something that a lot of people are going to use? And then hopefully we iterate. Like Squads, for instance, has evolved a lot. We used to have different weekly challenges and stuff, but they weren't particularly engaging. So we redid the whole UX on that, and the experience is more like gamified almost. So yeah, definitely, especially in the games industry, pleasing your users is super important, and it's definitely, honestly, I think that's the most fun part. I actually kind of like low-key live for the moments where someone on Twitter messages me something is broken. Like I just weirdly had someone this week message me that they could do a bug in gunfights, like the actual game, not the app. They could like have this bug happen with the tournament, the gunfight tournament. And like I managed to like compile their how to repro the bug and send it to like the gunfight tournament QA team at Infinity Ward, because I don't know, like it's kind of badass that I just get to make people happy or at least feel heard, which is cool.
Now, I gotta say, we do as everything we can for hackers, but we don't get a lot of people hacking the mobile app, and we have no control over the video game itself.
Yeah, I know they're like hard at work on the whole hacker situation. That stuff's really hard. I know they've done like a lot of things to improve that. Someone asked, what's my Twitter, it's just Tim Jung, TIMJUNG, Dev, DEV. So yeah, follow me. Follow all these people. If you just like look through my following, you'll find them too.
Zara had a question about if they would recommend getting into mobile dev or engineering after having experience with web development. And I know boot camps don't focus on mobile, but they're partly interchangeable depending on what frameworks you work with. Like if you work with React or if you work with React Native, wherever you learn it, if you learn it for the web, it's going to be extremely familiar when you get into mobile development with it. To kind of test the waters, you can start with just experimenting with things like Expo, but I would not argue that you need to start in one place or another, because across our team, we have examples of starting either in mobile engineering and working your way towards like front end frameworks or similar to web dev stuff, and people that started on the web side of things, and either of them now I would say can do this type of project. You can't really tell where they started. They're pretty well rounded.
Godot. Usually the question I see is Unity versus Unreal. I don't know what Godot is.
You guys were just talking about it today.
Godot is a Python style language that is open source engine. It's kind of the new. It's been around forever, but it's getting a lot of I guess news these days. I would go with Unity over Godot, mainly because I'm more of a fan of C#, and Godot you can write C# in, but it's kind of painful to get it set up. So just the ease of the language, I'd go with Unity. Interface wise, I'm not sure. They're both kind of a tie. You gotta learn them both. But because C#, I would go with Unity over Godot.
I always enjoy Unity, mostly once again for the community on it. The forums are super active. I don't use Unity much anymore, but like I'm still on the forums and I still answer stuff. Just because I've been in those situations where it just seems ridiculous what I had to do to make something work. So I enjoy being able to share that knowledge. And also the app store or the asset store on Unity is great. I know right now, because a lot of my side work that I've always done has been virtual reality. So we'd always stick to Unity with the ease of use, but now we are transitioning more into Unreal for a lot of the VR stuff. It's a beautiful engine. It is C++, which is like, and I do enjoy Unity being C#, because like Jason says, I enjoy C#.
So another question that's been posted a few times is, what's the average time for a new engineer to become productive? What's your best strategy to onboard a large code base? So, I mean, in theory, you can be productive day one. I know when Ricky first joined, he really impressed our director because he immediately hopped in and was fixing bugs that were posted in our Jira. So there's nothing necessarily I know there's this whole mantra that gets repeated, it takes 6 months before a developer you hire to be profitable. And I'm always kind of not necessarily. You can still get in and write code. Does it take time to master a code base and understand where everything is? Yeah, for sure. You're going to be digging around a lot and it's going to take time, especially our code base. It's just, there's so many features in the app. It definitely takes a while, but in theory, you can get to work pretty quick and that's why we hire people who can say, I don't know, because if they're comfortable saying, I don't know, then we know that they're comfortable saying, hey, Jason, I'm new to the code base. How does this work at all? And then we explain it to them or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I would argue to say that a new engineer is as productive as your interview was. And with that, how much attention did you pay to somebody that if you need them to be productive on day one, is that what you were looking for, and did you compromise?
And I guess the second part, what's your best strategy to onboard for a large code base? I mean, Jason partially answered that, making sure you pick the right person, but then it's just spending a lot of time talking to them, having good documentation, that sort of thing. So another question I'm going to pull is,
I would also say that having your team culture has something to do with that, because if someone comes in and they see everybody sitting at their desk with their blinders on and their headphones and they're not interacting with each other, I'm sure they're not going to be as comfortable getting up and saying, hey, I have to ask a question or what have you. If it doesn't look normal, like if they see it, they're more likely to go with the flow or, when in Rome. So our team, even in the office, we're very active. Some people are standing at each other's desks, things like that. On Slack, it's super active as well. And right from anybody in the beginning, they come into a group chat that they just get bombarded with messages all day anyway. So they just see how our chat works, how our communication works. And that, I think, has a lot more to do with onboarding than any level of document. I mean, documentation, of course, can help, but that interpersonal interaction with a new person and how comfortable and how fast they feel comfortable with contributing is kind of the speed that they're going to onboard at.
I agree. I think I found the whole kind of sink or swim works great with onboard, especially like you said, if you have a good interview process. Because I know Ricky jumped right in, was making MRs like his first, second day. Alex, our other team member who was a designer and came from the front end team over to mobile, very quickly started making pushes. And what was cool about him is he was new to React Native, so he didn't want to jump into the big code base, but he saw where his own personal skills can really help us. And that was helping us develop our styling. So he helped to make us like a global styling that we could all refer to through all of our components, and he helped really globalize a lot of our looks and stuff and just prettify the code because that's something he was comfortable doing. And he jumped right into that. And I remember with Tim, I was helping him on board, and I was under the kind of the impression of the thing like, okay, yeah, let me get them speed. I don't want them feeling too comfortable. And then a few days in, Tim's like, can I just take over? I was like, oh yeah, totally. Like, if you're ready to get in, go for it. Like, I'm sorry I'm holding you back. I totally was trying to be good about that and walk you through it as you need. But it seems like, if you get a good coder, they want to just jump in and get their hands dirty. They don't want to, because if you're a good enough coder, you know how to version control your things. You're not going to be pushing anything, destroying anything on your branch. You're going to know how to maintain your coding to not destroy other people's work.
Man, I don't
Sharon
even
asked
remember
about,
that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I should say, I don't even specifically remember that interaction, Gatlin, but I remember you being super helpful at the beginning. So same with Jason and Ricky, everyone was.
So Sharon asked about imposter syndrome, and I can definitely say I've felt it. Having I guess a semi unorthodox background. I mean, I've been coding since high school, but going through college and having the misfortune of having to leave early, not being able to finish, and just be self-taught beyond that for the next 10 years, or I would say 6 out of the last 10 years. I was driving an 18-wheeler teaching myself how to program, and my interview, I was actually on the road for this position. So when I got it, I was like, wow, I was floored. But if you have skills and somebody recognizes that, take it. Don't doubt yourself, and don't give yourself the credit that you have the value that you present, right? So you can do a lot just on your own, just kind of believing in what you do, and if you're dedicated to it and you're passionate about it, that imposter syndrome can fade over time. I can't really say it ever fully goes away, because you're like, oh man, the industry moves so fast. You're like, am I caught up? Do I know what I need to know to work on this framework? Or is the next version of the language gonna be that much more difficult, and how heavy is the refactor gonna be? And you can rest assured, most likely, if somebody can recognize that you're doing something and you've been thanked for it, just keep going. You're not an imposter.
Was your job significantly harder when you thought that it would be? Zahara's kind of nervous that even when I'm hired, the work may be more than challenging than I anticipated. I think that's a good feeling. Sorry. You should definitely over-prepare. Just because you never know. Like if you get to a startup and you get to this point where you might be hired as like a junior dev, but you find out the startup is just some like people who happen to get a good grant from someone and they don't know what they're doing, you're going to have a lot on your plate. But if you get into a team that's already kind of like established and working, you might not have that much on your plate. It was a lot of work to get the companion app going. And it wasn't hard in the way that I anticipated it. It wasn't me having a feeling that like, oh, I need to prove that I know my coding. Anytime I'd write something, people were always usually good about going, oh, hey, like, have you tried this function? Or, oh, what if we do this? Because like me and Jason, or I say a lot, is that it's for the good for the app. Like I don't care about my code and my own personal feelings about how good I wrote it. If you can find a better way to make the app work better, then you're also helping me. So feedback, always open to feedback, but the job was harder in a way of being able to kind of manage my time and burnout. Because, it was 3 of us in the beginning that are like, hey, you guys know React Native. We want this gigantic project of an app created in React Native. And they were like, sure, because we got the job. And then we're like, crap, this is a lot to take in at once. And just trying to get it all done. Towards the end, you can deal with getting really burnt out and making sure that you take some self-care time so that you don't just, do a lot of coding and then now you're pointless to the team. You don't want to stress out too much where you do that. You want to be able to give yourself weekends when you need to, take your time to study as well, but take care of yourself in order to be able to maintain your progress. Because I don't know if you guys ever dealt with it, but I've had those days where I've been coding so long when I just look at the screen, the letters and stuff just kind of blur together and it's all muddied. It's hard to see it because I've just been staring at it for way too long. And you realize that you just need to be able to manage your time, take breaks, don't let yourself get burnt out because that's not going to help anybody. That was the main struggle I dealt with. I was always okay looking up my own code and Googling issues that I need to, or just asking like, hey guys, what are we going to do about blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh, that's a good question. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, I kind of want to build on this too a little bit and just share some of my experience. So you're nervous that when you finally get hired, it'll be more challenging than anticipated. So sometimes me and Jason talk about how one thing we value in people is people who have learned by what we call trial by fire. I think especially me and Jason have a soft spot for that because we've been through painful trial by fires in our career experiences coding. For me, a lot of that was my first internship. I had zero guidance. My boss just was totally checked out and didn't give a crap about what I did. So a lot of it was me panicking every day. How do I code this stuff? And then my first actual job, I was still in college and I got hired full-time as a developer at a startup. So I was doing school full-time and I was trying to make this startup not fire me so I could pay my bills and finish up college. And like straight up, like depending on your situation, like there was nights where I straight up cried and stuff because like it was so much like all at once. But like on one hand, like as bad as that was for my mental health at the time, I'm not saying you should like get yourself in an abusive situation with a startup or something, but part of why I'm the developer who I am today is because I had those late nights where like it was just like sink or swim. And you had to get through it because there was no other option. So on some hand, I have a lot of respect for people who have gone through similar things. And I guess like my ultimate point is like, yeah, there might be times where it's really hard at your first job, but just know that those experiences are still part of your learning path. Just because you got your first job doesn't mean you're done learning. You're still going to gain all kinds of new experiences and stuff. And one day you'll be able to look back on them and see a lot of value in them and understand how they shaped who you end up becoming in terms of this career. So.
So see this question about a point where React Native performance might have been lagging behind, and if we had to patch things up or workarounds. Well, for a while in the project, we were stuck at a certain version of React Native that we wanted to move past, but we had dependencies that we could not upgrade without really making a lot of work for ourselves that would take an extended amount of time that we didn't have. It would have been maybe 2 extra sprints that we would have had to squeeze into 1 sprint, based on, issues that we would have to, like breaking fixes that we would have to work around, or technical debt that we would have to pay back in order to make the whole thing work. So we basically wrote it out on an older version of React for a while, and we did have to clone and modify 2 libraries that they had issues with that version of React Native. But the framework itself, I don't think we've had a terrible amount of issues with it. I would say since like 50x, whatever, any since the 50s of React Native, it's been fairly stable for us. But framework, but dependencies have been another story. But I would argue that that's kind of on its way out now, that the community is taking over so many things that, so many different aspects of the React Native framework that need to work better on Android and iOS, or just work more congruent on Android and iOS.
So another question that we got, where'd it go? Hold on, let me find it. Has anyone ever gotten fired after getting hired? Yeah, happens all the time. Not all the time, but it happens. How much time do you give a new hire to prove themselves? I think that definitely depends on the situation of the person. I think it's pretty rare people get fired. No one's really gotten fired on our team. Kind of before I joined, I think there's some people on the team who weren't culture fits. So maybe that's a lot of why I see people end up leaving or getting removed or something, is usually culture fit more than it tends to be work stuff, because work stuff you can kind of get better at, and usually people are down to give a chance. Also, it'd be pretty rare that we'd end up hiring someone who was like a false positive, because the interview process is there to make sure that they are competent at what they do. So I wouldn't I guess reading into that question, maybe I'm reading into it wrong, but I would ask a question like this when I was new to programming. I was like, is there a secret axe looming over my head all the time where I'm being judged and secretly they're waiting to fire me when I don't prove it? I would say don't stress, don't have too much anxiety. At the end of the day, especially if you're entry level, they know that. And your biggest weakness is choosing not to ask for help, choosing not to say I don't know when you need to. That's how you can actually improve quickly, is if you're just honest about your situation.
Yeah, because really, in our specific situation, we're looking for someone who's able to learn or willing to learn at least. The only reason that someone would be removed from the team is if there's a level of toxicity there that is actually dragging the rest of the team behind, is picking fights or getting judgmental if other people touch their code, and just causing interruptions in the work process itself. There's never been a time where oh, this person just sucks, and they got him out. But that's not to say that's everywhere, because I know there's a lot of big corporations or a lot of big companies out there that hire a lot of newer hires and give you lines, so many lines a day that you'd have to do to keep up with. And it's a lot more mainstream process to just make sure, oh, this person's keeping his daily line limit, and that. But if that's going to be the case, they're going to tell you that up front. If that isn't really the case, it's really going to be at the discretion of your team, and just see how you really fit and work with the team around you.
I'll say one thing I'm seeing is Kevin is saying stuff like you can get blacklisted in the industry, or the game industry is a small one. Your reputation can make or break your career. Sort of. That's sort of true. On one hand, it's not necessarily the game industry is this exclusive thing. A lot of people who work with us used to work at Hulu or Disney or just some random web shop or something. I don't really, I mean, unless like you're literally like a sexual predator or something, I don't hear about blacklisting too often. It's not like there's some secret network of people who can like make sure you don't get hired somewhere later. Lots of people don't work out on teams and then they go somewhere else and then they do work out on that team. So I wouldn't think that's typical unless you're like straight up committing crime or something.
I would argue that it takes a lot to be blacklisted in an industry. You have to kind of be very toxic person for that kind of thing to happen. And in our case, there's not any people like that you kind of get close to very often. You have to fly pretty low under the radar to get through a lot of the interview process that would go on in our company, at least. So I in certain positions, I don't think it's even that big of a fear that you should have, because most people just aren't. they're not that terrible.
So Kevin also followed up and said like NDA. Yeah, never break NDA. I mean, that's every company though at the same time. Bhavik asked, how do you guys manage breadth and depth of knowledge / concepts since there are so many concepts out there? Does anyone want to take a swing at that?
I think we focus on what is the most important to us, what's going to make the most impact first. And we make sure all of us understand it at a certain level. And as we all either try our hand at a certain aspect or a concept in the project, whoever kind of spreads their wings on it the best, or it gravitates more to, we encourage them to take a deep dive on their own and come back and share that information with the people on the team. So if anybody else has anything they want to add to that, or
yeah, we usually kind of all agree on. It's usually very like we run it very much like a community where if things are added, we usually have like almost like a call and someone presents stuff. You know, it's like, oh, like we've been doing stuff forever this way. We'll continue following our own platform. But if someone's like, hey, I found this awesome thing. Here's a side project that I created and I want to show you guys some ideas. So we'd all sit down and we kind of review this side project and go, oh, I love how we can do this. You know, these are the pros and cons. What do we say about bringing this into our code base? When might we be able to do that? Or like now, if we upgrade to this new version, we have new components we can start, tools we can start getting. And it's just really what we all personally agree on would work best for the app.
I think too that like this whole topic kind of makes me just think about maybe we also hire for people, I don't know if we do this subconsciously or what, but who take initiative. Because like one thing about how our process works is kind of like every sprint, there's some level of workload that needs to be completed. And it's not necessarily assigned to anyone. It's kind of just like it naturally forms. Like so-and-so is like Ricky's like, I'm going to go take on matchmaking or match history or whatever. And everyone's just like, okay, cool. That sounds dope. Sounds like you really want to work on that. So go work on it. Like, and we try to be encouraging of people when they really want to work on something. Like, yeah, like if you really like it, then go do it. So maybe like a lot of, I guess that whole, maybe I'm getting off track, but yeah, I guess so when it comes to breadth and depth of knowledge and concepts, it's kind of like, so once you take initiative on stuff, like that becomes your focus. So that becomes what you start developing knowledge for. Like right now, it might be arguable that I know the most on the app about video streams because I'm the one who's been building the video stream stuff that's in the app. It's not exclusive to me. If someone else wanted to jump in and help with it, by all means, they could, and they should come to me and ask me so I can get them up to speed. But like, that's how naturally everyone just kind of finds, like, we all have a breadth of things that we can do, but we also tend to develop skill sets for specific things too. Like Jason's really good at making the builds, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know, it really depends on your team, on, you know, because we all have a pretty good idea of the knowledge that it takes to run the whole app. Any one of us can go work on a specific like component or section. One, we try to document as good as we can. Two, we encourage that in each other, like to be able to know everything. Now, I personally usually I'm not one to like quickly jump on a big task. Unless I have a big like fiery passion to go like, oh, this sounds awesome, I'm gonna go build that when it's like available to get grabbed. I usually let everyone else pick like what they want. They're like, oh, I'm so like, I want to do this, and I let the passion take all the things that people have passion for, and then I see kind of what's left, and I can go through, okay, let me make sure that us as a team is hitting our deadlines and all the stuff that we need to get done. So it really depends on your team and how you guys personally fall into place on how you guys want to divide that knowledge. I know someone asked earlier about would we ever consider maintenance only role, and I'm not a fan of that. I could see that in like maybe a gigantic project somewhere where like you really need someone just kind of like bug fixing and stuff. But we're a very small, tight-knit group working on this app, and we want to keep it that way. Like, I don't want anyone to feel lesser than anyone else or be like, you're not allowed to take that ticket, because you're only maintenance. The only time I could see kind of a maintenance only is if we would ever bring in like an intern or something who would want to be able to get into the code and doesn't have that much experience, and not even experience to be able to get it done, but maybe just kind of get it done more of a timely manner. We would be able to use them to be like, hey, like here's some maintenance stuff. We've never done that, but that's just the only time I could think that we would possibly have a maintenance only role.
Como asked, I constantly find myself on my computer, reading articles, coding, watching video tutorials, and now even on LinkedIn. I recently started to keep distance on Sundays. How do you balance work life with personal life?
I take an hour walk. I walk at least 2 miles every day. And that, of course, I can't do that from in front of the computer unless I got a treadmill, but no, I'm not getting one. And I also take my weekends. I try to avoid the computer Saturday and Sunday if possible. Like I try to like stay unplugged on those days.
Yeah, you just really want to separate yourself. Like I was mentioning before, it really helps if you have an area literally labeled, not literally, but more figuratively labeled work. Like this is where you sit down to work. Like I said, I kind of do the same. I take walks. I go walk my garden, check on my vegetables, I weed for a little bit, I'll come in, I'll like rinse off and then kind of, sit back down to work. If I start getting like heated or like I said, like muddy vision on the code, I'll go take a walk through the garden, or I'll go like, I don't know, do some dishes or something that I need to do some laundry, play with the kids, and then kind of sit back down and find my groove. The one thing you don't want to do is stress about it, because with anything, like if you ever had a school project and you're like, oh God, I got to get it done, that just makes it harder to get it done. And it's, worse quality. It's all about the app. So we want to make sure all of our code going in had the time put into it. We've had the reviews. You took your time doing it. You're not stressing. You're just trying to hit a deadline of some sort.
Yeah, so one thing, we're pretty lucky that we have a high level of trust and that we also have cultivated a team that has like a high level of initiative. So for me, I'm not good at separating work-life balance, and I'm actually okay with that, mostly because like I have ADHD. So for me, things hold my interest for a certain amount of time. That can be both work and it can be like a video game I want to play or something. So I don't mind that, like, I might work for like an hour and then like do something different for 15 minutes and then get back to work. But like at the end of the day, I know if I put in the amount of time that I should be putting in, and like I hold myself responsible for that. But like the ultimate reality is like we're super lucky that we have a culture where we're trusted to get the work done. As long as it's getting done, then however you choose to run your life or whatever. So like sometimes like I'll shut my work laptop and put it away and do something totally different. But like for me, like my days usually like I work in the morning and then I kind of have like a break in the middle of the day, and I usually pop open my laptop at night because that's like when I kind of get my second wind and can get a lot of stuff done, and that just works for me. So but if you're trying to unplug from stuff too, like lately I did start using like a Chrome extension that lets you block certain sites. So like maybe you should limit your LinkedIn browsing to 30 minutes a day or something if that's sucking up too much time. Activision
So-
has a long history since the 80s with 8-bit games. Do you still have the source code of those games? Do you have access to all the source code games, or are you only access? Jason might know better than me on that.
Yeah, all that stuff is siloed off. I think there's some like all that old Atari assembly somewhere in a vault, but I think only Bobby knows about it. I'm not sure.
All right. I'm going to jump off. I got to make sure my kids go to bed. It's, as you see here in the East Coast, it's real dark. But thanks for having us. Thank you so much, Ashley, for the invite. I appreciate it. Everyone have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so much. Sorry, were you going to say more?
No, I'm good. Say good night.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing your wisdom and advice with everyone here.
Thank you. See you guys.
There you go. I'll keep hanging around for a little bit longer till this dies down some more because I'm feeling lazy and don't want to go back to work. So if anyone wants to hang around, let's answer some more.
I kind of have to go as well. I would love to stick around, but thank you to everyone for this talk. It was amazing. You guys have a great night.
Thank you so much, Jason.
All right, peace out, Jason.
All right, later, everybody.
Ricky, you gonna hang around? I'll probably hang around for like 10 more minutes. And then
Yeah, I'll jump off when you jump off, so you're not alone in this.
Cool, thanks, man.
No problem. Dude.
All right, so I'll try to wrap up some of these other questions so you guys don't feel left out. How much code is different between the iOS and Android app? Not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, 95, 98%. Yeah, that's true. Personally, we don't have to write native stuff that like requires really good performance. Often when we do have to write stuff that's different, it's usually stuff surrounding push notifications or like system config stuff or something that varies from OS to OS. What advice would you give to someone moving from a non-coding background? Same as earlier, build more projects. Literally that's the number one thing. Like, if there's like one thing I could make every new programmer take away, it's like build something. The reason I got my first job at my internship is because I was the only person in the interview process when they came to my school who had a side project that worked, and I pulled out my phone and showed it to them. It's like a little game or something. And they later told me, they're like, yeah, well, everyone else was the same. They did all the same course content. There was nothing different about them other than that. So more projects are good.
Yeah, side projects are super helpful. I built an iOS app that literally I did it in college, and so that kind of like helped me out in a couple of interviews. And so those little side projects of actually releasing it actually helps out. It really does.
What testing libraries are you guys using? Ricky, this might be a good one for you.
Testing libraries, we use Jest for unit testing, and we used to use Detox, but we haven't got around with a new update to implement it again, but that's something that we want to do. But now that we have our own like QA, local QA that actually is like a part of our team, we just ask him to test stuff for us. Like if we build a new feature, I usually just ping him on Slack and be like, hey, just built this. Can you pull this on stage and run through some of your tests? He has like this whole automation stuff. I don't know exactly what he's using now, but man, I wish I knew what it was. Do you know what it is, Tim? What it's called?
I think it might be Appium.
Yeah. It's Appium. Yeah. He uses that for, which his story is actually pretty impressive. Tim used to do this talk at, where did you used to do it? It was
Games.
Yeah, right. It was like a hack. Was it Hack Night or something? I can't remember.
Yep. Yeah, it was Community Hack Night.
And Brandon, he's our QA tester. He literally came up one night and he was like, "Hey, I wanted to automate the app to do a certain thing for the game," and so I went ahead and did it. And we're like, "Dude, this is dope, man." We're actually in the middle of hiring somebody right now, and then like that's how like his story was, like getting him onto our team was just because he had this side thing that he wanted to do with the game, and he figured out how to automate it with this test because that's what his background was. And at that time we were looking for someone to actually help us, which is pretty cool. So yeah, he uses that for both the app and for the website MyCod. So it's pretty cool. We use that Appium and Jest for unit testing.
Question: Agile versus Kanban versus waterfall. Not waterfall. It's just old and you can't really change direction. At least it's my understanding. I've never really worked under it. I don't really know Kanban either, to be honest. And Agile, I guess, is technically what we use, but we're not super strict on it. I kind of don't believe in a ton of strictness on that stuff anyways. I mean, yeah, there's some advantages, but at the same time, like, it can mentally exhaust your team. Looking for my first software engineering role and was wondering how much time should I put into algorithms versus building apps. That depends on the role. I mean, you know, big companies like Amazon, they're going to whiteboard you and their whole process is going to just be like awful whiteboarding and, you know, algorithm tests and stuff. And for a lot of places even, that's just the first thing that they do. I know Blizzard still does that to some extent. I know Riot Games will whiteboard you and they'll make you go through like a, you know, that typical like write an algorithm and tell me the big O of it and all that stuff. That stuff's all really relevant, but I think that's a skill set I lack in. And part of the reason why I lack in it is because I don't think it's a good assessment of the job, and I'm not going for jobs that make that such a huge part of the interview process right now or anything. So it really depends. Like for our team, building an app and a project is what would get your resume in front of us and give us, like, make us care. And then our code test is essentially a take home building an app. So that would be more relevant for us. But it really varies. The thing to really do is like go on Glassdoor. When I've applied to jobs in the past, I go on Glassdoor and I write down every single software engineering question that anyone was asked for that place. And then I try to answer them. And that'll give you a good idea of what their interview process is actually like. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Ricky.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the position that you want to join, you know, because you can either do backend, which is basically all logic and dealing with databases and formatting data, or you can go focus on like front end or the full stack, you know, that'd be pretty useful, or you can specialize. So it really depends on what you're trying to like target.
What feature tech are you guys looking forward to working in the app and in general? Good question. I don't really see React Native changing too much. So, I mean, like hooks have been great. Ricky led a lot of the charge on like our shift over to hooks and stuff and functional components. So that was like, I'm very satisfied in terms of our project now just because of that. Yeah, I don't know if I got a good answer for that one. In general, I guess like it'd be cool to get back into VR modding or something like that in my free time. What version of React Native are you using? Okay, so this is right now we're stuck on 59 and we've been in the process of updating the 62 for a really long time. I think we're almost there. It's really been a hard process because 59 to 60 was like a big change and our project is so big. So that's definitely been the struggle. Is always upgrading a struggle to keep up. It's gonna get better once we're past 60 because they made like the big significant changes. So after that upgrade shouldn't be so bad. I think they finally saw enough of the community was suffering with upgrades that they finally got it together. But yeah, so far it's been pretty painful, not gonna lie. Or does the app get stuck in some version for some time? Yeah, so basically, yep, it does get stuck in some version, but that's not the goal going forward. We're trying to get out of that. React Native versus Ionic. I don't know anything about Ionic. I like React Native because it's JavaScript, which tons of people use. It's React, which tons of people use. So I can't speak to Ionic specifically. Any learning material references you recommend when learning a new skill set? The docs, the official docs, go sit and read them. You can fool yourself with paid courses or Udemy courses or whatever. I mean, paid courses in like a boot camp. Not what I mean, because that's actually like a class and that's better. But like you can tell yourself like, I'm totally gonna like go do this tutorial on Udemy. It's gonna teach me everything. But like a lot of that is just fluff, in my opinion. Like 99% of people just don't go read the docs, and the docs have everything you ever need to know. Is it kind of dry? Sure, but when learning something new, go read the docs. Most of the time, especially with like the React docs and React Native docs, like there's like here's where to start if you're new, and it's like, oh, and it guides you through it. Like it's free, like, and it's written by the people who made it. So 90% of the time you should do that. Been using Code Academy for JavaScript. I mean, that's chill.
Yeah, I mean, I still use the JS docs. I always forget like about array / versus split or something like that. I forget what it's called. So I still use the docs still. So yeah, docs are king.
Yeah, I Google the dumbest stuff still. Don't worry, that's never gonna stop. You're gonna Google dumb stuff for the rest of your life. I'm sure if you looked at my history right now, like especially like when it's like, if I'm like up, because I'm up late, and like I said, I like working late at night sometimes just because that's just when I can do things. But if I'm like tired and working or something, like I will Google the dumbest stuff because I'm like, I'm not gonna try to rack my brain. I'll just get to the bottom of it. I mean, that's why Google's there anyways. Do you think the interview process will change since it's viewed as flawed by so many people? If you mean the whiteboarding process and stuff, I think it's changing in some places. Like our team doesn't do that. A lot of people in the industry are very vocal about how much whiteboarding sucks. It's definitely changing now too, because it has to, because a lot of places aren't having in-person interviews because of COVID now. So do I hope it changes? Yeah. Do I think it'll change? Probably not, especially at big places like Amazon and stuff, because something like Amazon gets so many applicants that the easiest way that they can just start reducing the number of applicants down is to make an annoying coding algorithm solving online, you do it in your browser challenge, and that weeds out 95% of their apps right there because they have that sheer volume. So to some extent, no, this stuff's not going away. That's why there's books written about it, like cracking the coding interview and all this stuff. It's just because like it's so ingrained in the industry that I still think it's a skill you should spend time on, as much as I dislike it personally. How much math and physics is common in game coding? I don't know. We don't code games. We code an app. But if you're an actual game person, it can be a lot. It depends what you do. Like if you work on UI on games, you're not going to be doing as much math. If you're like a physics programmer for a game engine, you're going to be doing a lot of math. So it varies. I would say that game coding in general probably has a higher likeliness to involve math and physics than being a web developer though. So I'm just like machine gunning through these. Ricky, if you ever want to jump in or anything, feel free.
Nah, dude, you're killing it, man. You're doing good.
Material UI is one of the things I've seen to be used for React Native. Are you styling your components from scratch? Yeah, all scratch. We don't use a library because we have a lot of specific designs, and I think that you know, to then be married to a specific library would potentially be problematic at some point or limit us. But yeah, we just use scratch.
Plus our design teams likes to change all of our UI like last minute, and so we always have to custom make everything. And I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it actually feels pretty cool to have like all these little custom components and libraries that you already built. You know, so it's pretty cool to do that. So yeah, everything's usually custom on ours. Besides, I think the only thing that's not has been like graphs, because of like, you know, it just takes too much time, and it's already been built and it's, you know, works straight out of the box, and that's what we usually use. We just have to like configure it a little bit. But that's pretty much the only third-party library that we use is like Victory, React Native Victory. That's pretty much it.
So, and just to give some like context, some broader mobile developer context. So basically what happened a long time ago is why Google made Material UI and like that whole design pattern is like all the Android apps back in like 2012 looked awful. They're just terrible looking. And Google was like, we can have an app store full of things that just look awful. So what if we like offered everyone like something like a design pattern, and then like if it was good for like 99% of apps, then like everyone will use it and the apps won't look so ugly. And that's like kind of, and they're like, and we'll lead the charge by like using it in a bunch of our apps, and then like that'll tell other people to go use it too. But we're not adhering to Google designs very much. We're more interested in adhering to the Call of Duty franchise branding and like design language essentially. So it would be pretty unlikely we'd impose an existing design pattern over something when we kind of already have a design language going on for the Call of Duty franchise. Do we do daily stand-ups? Sort of, yeah. I mean, we're pretty anti-meeting, and so we do daily write-ins at least. Like every day, you at least have to write something at 1 p.m. And then we're supposed to do a daily stand-down, but that one I don't always write in for if I don't feel like it. Which is like the same thing, just write like a sentence about what you're working on. And then like a few days a week, there's supposed to be calls. Like, and so instead of a write-in, we're supposed to get on a call, but like it's kind of optional. So, so he said, you're working from a design team to build out components. Yes. How much say do you have to work with the design team and chime in that something might be better if it looked like this? A lot. Our designers and UX people are actually super chill. They're super open to feedback and input. Sometimes we go to them and say, hey, this actually looks kind of hard to build in a code sense. Can we change the design to make it easy? Or like one thing we encourage them to do is like, hey, like we have a ranking board throughout the app where things are like, you know, listed as first place, second place, third place. I try to get them to reuse that and keep it looking the same as much as possible, because then I can just reuse my ranking board component that I wrote. And one thing I actually do think that's really cool is like, growing up, I always wanted to be a game designer. And in a way, the app is kind of an opportunity to do game design because there are like game design-y behavior things that we can do with people. So it's fun when I get to work with a designer and say like, hey, I think players might enjoy this a little more if it's this way. And then, you know, a lot of the time they'll be like, yeah, it's a good point. Do we use Slack? Yep, we use Slack. Any other questions? I think I might have missed some. If I did, you can just repost it. No, all right. So did anyone on your team have to dig into Objective-C or Java? So Ricky could speak more to Objective-C because Ricky actually has an iOS background originally, and I can speak toward Java because I have a native Android experience background. I have had to dig into Java, specifically around push notification stuff. Ricky, have you had to touch Objective-C at all?
No, actually, most of the custom components that we have to put in usually are like straight out of the box, or like let's say you need third party like pushes, it's just adding the configs into it. And so it's really just following their documentation and then just adding it step by step. So that's pretty much all you have to do. We haven't had to build like anything like custom like that has to talk over the bridge over to JavaScript over to the native side. So we're pretty lucky on that. So like literally we use about like 99% of the code just on JavaScript, and most of the stuff that we do on the native side is usually custom. Like mostly all I've seen is just push notifications. Other than that, like everything is just following the docs of like, hey, we want to add this native component, so we have to follow these guidelines and just add it on there, and that's pretty much it.
Next question is, do you think with so many people going into coding, salaries will go down due to market saturation? Probably not yet. With people working remotely, I think there might be salary shifts. A lot of salaries are based on cost of living for the area. And I know if Activision, you know, LA has a high cost of living, if they were to hire someone remote in the middle of Iowa or Idaho or something, I don't know if they'd offer them the same salary because their cost of living is less. So there might not be as much of a need to compete on salary. There's a lot of people going into coding, sure, but still my impression, I might be wrong, is still that it's still a very underserved market, especially in terms of good programmers are kind of hard to come by. So like if I were you for this field, that's one of the last things I'd be stressing about. It's like our salary is going to come down a bunch and stuff. Just be good at what you do, and I think you'll be fine. How do you guys have to deal with the bridge? How often do you guys have to deal with the bridge? Not too often. Pretty much never, to be honest. I guess I'm going to 7:30 at this point. It's just so I can end on an even number. But unless there's no more questions, I'll cut it short. Well, I will offer you guys one thing, since this is the small group of people who stuck around all the way to the end. If you follow me on Twitter, which I can't type in chat right now for some reason, and you reach out to me, you can send me your resume and I will review it for you if you want. And if you want critique on what you might be missing in terms of content or something, or what might make it better to stand out to employers, I will give you my honest answer about what that could be. So thanks for sticking around. Appreciate it. Yeah, for real, I'm always down to help people as much as they're willing to help themselves. So if you reach out, please feel free to do so. Public GitHub, good to have. Sure, probably overrated though. People go really hard on that. I think having a great LinkedIn probably helps more. All right, thanks guys. I can finally type in chat now. I don't know why I couldn't before. But that's how you can reach out to me on Twitter and I'll help you out and give you feedback if you want it. Cool. Thanks for having us, Ashley.
Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for offering to help review resumes. That's super awesome.
Sure.
Thank you and Ricky for staying on to answer more questions. We had a lot of amazing questions and a lot of amazing advice from both of you, as well as Jason and Caitlin tonight. So just want to extend my many, many thanks. Some key takeaways that I personally wrote down was like building passion projects and seeing them through is super, super important. And it's okay to not know things and to ask for help, and non-technical communication is definitely super, super important. And the imposter syndrome does come for everyone. So I just want to take the time to thank everyone who is currently still on and just say that you are incredible and amazing. And the fact that you're dedicating this time to continue to learn and improve yourself and give back to the community is just incredible. And the world needs more people like you. So thank you again for being here tonight. I will go ahead and drop my email into the chat as well. If you ever have any questions about Codesmith or just events in general, feel free to shoot me an email there. But yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your evening.